Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the Bundesliga podcast. I'm Manu Veth. He is Matt Ford. We are at the Allianz Arena. He has a weird blue background. I have a wall behind me. We have beer, Paulana, which means the result is clear. Bayern Munich win this game 2-1. Matt, we watched this game together here. Well, sort of. We were on separate ends of the press tribune, but I could ask you how you're doing, but since we spent the entire day together, I know you're doing great. So let's save all that bullshit for later. Thoughts on this game before we get into in-depth analysis?
Well, yeah, I said in the podcast before the game that it's always a little bit unfortunate that Dortmund were heading to Munich in such good form, but coming up against a Bayern Munich team which were in arguably even better form. But then when it came to it and we saw the lineup came out, I don't think Borussia Dortmund helped themselves. I think when we all saw this defensive lineup, and it was an ultra defensive Borussia Dortmund lineup, wasn't it? With three centre mids in Felix Metscher, Marcel Sabitzer, and Pascal Gross. Niklas Süle in for Benzebaini, and only Guirassy and Adeyemi as the outlets up front. It was ultra defensive, and I sort of thought, okay, that's justified. But then when we saw how the first 45 minutes played out, there's definitely a case to say in hindsight it was too much. I can barely remember a single occasion when Dortmund got out of their own half. They were fortunate to only be 1-0 down at half time, and I think we'll probably discuss the second half in a second. But the second half did ultimately show that perhaps being so ultra defensive maybe wasn't entirely necessary.
Yeah, Niko Kovac said as much, right? Post-match. He said that they got the first half completely wrong tactically as well, which was an admission by him. They said they couldn't deal with Harry Kane playing as a roaming number 10. They adjusted in the second half a little bit better, which I'm on court with. I agree with those statements. My initial thoughts, when I watched that first half, I was saying, dear Lord, this is going to end in a bloodbath. And it should have, right? Harry Kane scores 20th minute-ish, but Michael Olise really early on has a big chance that he should have put away. Luis Diaz had what I felt like 2 or 3 good chances to score. Olise had another opportunity. This was a Bayern Munich team that came out with a clear mission to end this as quickly as possible. And I said in the Substack chat at halftime, like, the best news for Borussia Dortmund is that it's only 1-0, right? And in the second half, they came out way better structured. I thought the match was actually really balanced in the second half. Bayern Munich didn't have the sort of emphasis. They still missed a lot of chances. I mean, Diaz had a clear-cut opportunity, right? Olise had one that he put in the side netting.
Fantastic tackle from Nico Schlotterbeck.
Oh my
Olise, that was
God.
outstanding. You were a bit closer to that down at your end of the press box.
That's right. So, like, just to put things into perspective, Bayern Munich have an incredibly big press box, which means like you could sit either almost at the end of the Bayern goal or the end of the Dortmund goal in the second half. And you said that almost the Dortmund goal, and I said out almost the Bayern goal, which was kind of handy because it gave us some very different perspectives, didn't it? Everything is just bigger in Bavaria. It's like the Texas of Germany. So it's the Allianz Arena, and the press box is bigger than everything. So the beer glasses, but yeah, it gave us a really good opportunity to do something that we haven't done really often on the Gegenpressing Substack, right? To write a match report together with different perspectives, right? And yeah, you're quite right. I saw the Schlotterbeck tackle, and to be quite honest with you, Matt, I actually thought Schlotterbeck was one of the best players on the field, period. Not just for Dortmund, period. He had a really good game.
Well, it was really solid, but I think that brings us on quite well to the incident that happened at my end of the pitch in the first half, and that was obviously Harry Kane's goal. The Joshua Kimmich corner right in front of me floated into the 6-yard box. Now, like we said, it was an ultra-defensive Dortmund performance. They had not just Gregor Kobel, but in front of him, 3 central defenders, Nico Schlotterbeck, Waldemar Anton, and Niklas Süle, plus Serhou Guirassy, all 1.87 meters of him, had come back into the 6-yard box to defend that corner. I was really, really shocked. So as the ball was in mid-flight, you could see Kane in a half yard of space in the 6-yard box. So this was not looking good. And he was beginning his jump. And even at that moment, you thought, this is not looking good at all for Borussia Dortmund. And so the goal went in. I've written as much in my little talking point from a Borussia Dortmund defensive perspective. If you're going to be so defensive, justifiably so, going away to Bayern Munich, then the very basic that you have to get right is not to concede from a set piece. Absolutely basic. So a terrible, terrible goal to concede. I was really quite shocked that was allowed to happen. There were some reports of a potential little push from Kane onto Garcia. I asked Kane about it just now in the mix zone, and I think he gave like the most English response ever. It's like, if that's a foul, then the game's gone. I do agree.
So it's actually, so this is great. It's actually really amazing that we had two of us here for gegenpressing, right? Which means we could split duties a little bit, and we spoke to different people post-match. You spoke to Kane. I had the opportunity to go to the press conference with Niko Kovac. I spoke to Joshua Kimmich as well. We get to Kimmich and you a little tussle with him a little bit later, I think.
I missed a question. Whatever, carry on.
He did not like that at all.
Right.
He was a little bit of a teacher there, wasn't he? Like, pay attention, Matt. Anyways, it's great that we had split duties, because Niko Kovac said that he didn't think it was a foul. Like, he didn't think it was a foul, but he said because the way Dunkert refereed the game, and I actually agree with that the line of thought is because he drove such a hard line with all these little tiny fouls that he did whistle down, that he should have also whistled that down. He said it shouldn't have been a foul, but because of the line the referee chose, he should have also whistled that down. Look, I did a big article a couple of weeks ago from Stuttgart where I said that the Demirovic goal should have stood because of the way he wrestled himself clear and then scored. I think the Bundesliga refereeing is way too, it doesn't let enough go. And I think this is a clear goal. I'm the first to say, look, I think Bayern Munich get a lot of calls in their favor in this league, but this is not one of them. I think
there was one. I agree, but there was one call which I think Bastian Dinkard also got wrong, and actually went in Bayern in. Yeah, also went against Bayern Munich, actually. Yeah, come to think of it. The drop ball, which came about after, I think was it Felix and Metscher had been dispossessed after a quite careless flick, which is also frustrating to see. The one outlet that they had a moment out, and Metscher gave away possession. Anyway, from
before that Riasson got a yellow card for...
there was that as well. But then either way, but the pass was then played by, I can't remember which Bayern player was played. The pass, it might have been Pavlovic. I can't quite remember. Either way, Dinker got his positioning wrong, and the ball hit him. It can happen. Refs can get in the way. They arguably, they should ideally not. I think he had got his positioning a little bit wrong, and the ball hit him. Okay, so you think it would be a drop ball, referee's ball, back to Bayern Munich possession, but he somehow made the decision to give the possession to Borussia Dortmund, which led to, I think, justified complaints from Harry Kane and several other Bayern Munich players, which I totally agree. I didn't understand that decision at all.
I mean, that's
strange refereeing performance today.
That's my pet peeve of refereeing altogether, right? Like that there's no clear line, and also that too many times they whistle down too many of these small fouls. Just let the game go, and I think that's a clear advantage that like maybe the Premier League has over the Bundesliga, that more stuff gets just allowed to play on, and therefore you have more, of the good chances, etc. You have a fan over there. That's great.
That's my colleague Manny from from Sport 1 trying to distract me.
Let's just give people some insight how we're doing this. We're sitting. So we got kicked out of the bar area where the big press box cinema is, or the big press conference cinema is. We got kicked out of that, and we don't want to do this in the media working area because we don't want to distract our colleagues who are writing articles. So we're sitting in a hallway, and there's people coming left, right, and center, waving at us, not realizing that we're like recording this live without. It's a lot of fun, but it's also hilarious.
We're getting there. Also, a lot of fun. I'm going to use that as a segue.
Great.
Was I thought Harry Kane's defensive performance. Not something
Mm.
we see a lot of, but I really enjoyed watching his defensive efforts in the final 10 minutes because Borussia Dortmund were putting on a lot of pressure by that point. Credit to them. The away end was rocking by that point, trying their best to suck a second goal into Manuel Neuer's net. But and in Bayern, it was a case of all hands to the pumps at the back, including Harry Kane. One diving, sliding tackle, I think, to block a Fabio Silva shot. A couple of other really, really neat, well-timed little tackles, or putting his foot in to dispossess, I think, Mecha on one occasion, Sabitzer on another, I think it might have been. Really impressive from Kane. I asked him about that afterwards, and I'm not sure if I quite believe him here. He said that on occasion, he enjoys getting involved defensively, and he actually prefers watching his tackles back than his goals. I'm not sure if I really buy that. But yeah, ever the pro. But yeah, but must be said, from a purely professional standpoint, absolutely, yeah, outstanding from Harry Kane today. His header for the goal, his slightly deeper role, obviously starting deeper behind Nick Jackson today, which I thought was also interesting. I thought actually brings the best out in Harry Kane. Once again, spreading those balls left, right, and centre. He's just so dangerous. And then dropping back even deeper in the final 10 minutes to do his defensive part as well. Really, really impressive all-round performance.
Well, like Vincent Kompany was full of praise after the game. He mentioned that, he said that this was his most complete performance yet. And there has been for many years this criticism of Harry Kane that he doesn't score in the big moments, right? And he scored this season he scored against Chelsea, he scored against Borussia Dortmund now. Those the two most important games that Bayern Munich had in this still very young season, right? But I put it down in our thoughts piece. He's on pace for 58 Bundesliga goals at the moment, right? And while a lot of goals he scored last year were penalties, that's not the case this year, right? A lot of the goals come from open play. Yes, this was a corner, but this is the sort of moments that Bayern Munich signed him for, like that to have these big moments where you can find him in the box and he scores. But it's his complete play. Ahead of his second goal, the second Bayern Munich goal that Michael Olise scores in the most hilarious fashion, but that pass that he plays into a streaking Luis Diaz is incredible. He's sort of on the right of the pitch in his own end, and he kind of just swings it almost like it's kind of like a quarterback in American football, right? It's like this like really opening play. It swings across the field to the other side onto the left side of the attacking end of the pitch, finds Luis Diaz, and then eventually the ball ends up in net. But that ball that just to slice open Dortmund's defense, that is something that we've seen over recent weeks from Harry Kane that we haven't seen before. And I jokingly said a few weeks ago when we discussed his play on a podcast with Stefan that he's almost playing a little bit like Toni Kroos at times. And I mean this in a very positive way, but like this ability and vision to opening up plays and making really crucial key passes and making passes over a long distance is, I think, something that we suspected we knew he could do, but now we're seeing it, and it's an incredible weapon that he has.
Where do you think this leaves the race between Bayern and Dortmund specifically, and then the Bundesliga title race more generally? Obviously, we're only 7 games in, but Bayern now are already 7 points clear of Borussia Dortmund, and how many points clear now of Red Bull?
5 points of Leipzig.
Where do we stand on this now?
Where do we stand on this? It's a good question, Matt. Look, there's our dinner plates going by. Just like the title race, there's the Meisterschale already on it, maybe. No, it's a really good question. Joshua Kimmich was asked this in the mixed zone, and he was very defensive about it. He said that they have played a lot of in the recent years. They have played a lot of good first halves of the season, so Hinrunde, and then sort of fell off in their performances in the second half of the season, right? And so made it really clear that this is a good start, but nothing else. Jan Christian Dresen spoke to the media. I don't know if you caught him or if you were somewhere else in the mixed zone.
I was waiting for Harry Kane.
Okay. Yeah, he said no title has been won after match day 7. When Vince Kompany was also asked, he said he doesn't think about it at all. He lives in the moment, and the boys just want to win every game in front of them. That's the only thing that they're worried about.
How much can we how's that blame or accusations can we level at Borussia Dortmund in? I think it's a question of
in the first half,
to what extent were they ever going to be in a title race this year or not? And I would suggest that going into the season, it probably wasn't necessarily the first thing on everyone's lips in Dortmund. Maybe that changed a little bit in recent weeks, given how stable they'd been. And I think, and also particularly given how good Eintracht Frankfurt's initial start was. Do you remember that? That was about a month ago. We were all talking about Frankfurt being the potential challengers to Bayern Munich. Probably not going to quite turn out that way.
Stuttgart are third.
Stuttgart are third. RB have recovered really, really well from that opening 6-day thumping here. Although, as we were saying before kickoff, they have had a relatively straightforward set of fixtures.
But you got to beat the teams that you're facing, right?
And they do. That's fair enough.
And that has been a weakness of a lot of Bayern's contenders, that they don't beat those, they don't win those games.
I'm still trying to work out where I stand on whether Dortmund should be disappointed at being 7 points behind or not, because part of me thinks they were never going to be in a real title race anyway this season, but then part of me thinks they started so well in the season, so stable. Nico doing really well, and even Nico Koval in the mix zone just now. He said the second half we showed, and this is like pretty much word for word, we showed that we can play in Munich. We showed that we can be the better team in Munich. Those words not mine in the second half. And there's merit to that. You can make that argument. They were the better team in the second half. Yeah, were they too defensive therefore in the first half? Is this a massively wasted opportunity for Borussia Dortmund, despite how good Bayern Munich undoubtedly were?
I would say so. Okay, so here's Niko Kovac said ahead of the game that last year the gap was 25 points, right? And that they're not going to be able to reduce that 25-point gap. Their goal is to reduce that 25-point gap this season, but they don't know if that's going to be enough to win the title. Fair enough. And I think they're going to be able to do that. And I don't think the title race is over yet. There is going to be a phase where Bayern Munich are going to drop points, and it's going to get a little bit tighter. Having said that, I think I saw Dortmund's lineup come out, and I think we had a conversation a little bit, right? I'm like, I don't know about that, right? I thought it was too conservative. It was too defensive. I was worried that Kovac was not playing to his strengths and trying to react to Bayern Munich. You look at the other side of things. Kompany, just basically the only change he made was Jackson for Gnabry, and that's because Gnabry has an injury, right? He had to make that change. And I think what disappoints me about that first half is that Dortmund didn't bank on their strengths. They should have really gone with the lineup that has made them come in here with such a good form.
Or at least they didn't bank on their newfound strengths. I think we always knew at the end of last season, we knew that Kovac had stabilised Dortmund defensively. We know they can do that side of the game. But what they've begun to show a little bit this season is those interplays a bit between, particularly Adeyemi, but also Bayer and Guirassy to a slightly lesser extent.
Exactly.
But there was none of that today.
Well, because Bayer didn't start. Because Bayern didn't start, right? So like Guirassy was hanging there in the air, and they tried to punt these long balls to him, but there's only one other outlet, that's Adeyemi. And Guirassy is not in good form. We know he is not fit.
In fact, there was one, I think I made a note of it in the first half, one of the few long balls that Dortmund managed to sling into the Bayern box. I think it was Dario Upamecano easily won the ball in the air. I think it was ahead of Guirassy, to double check. And yeah, that was probably the only time they even got a ball anywhere near the box. Yeah. Far too passive and paid the price. But yeah, like Gregor Kobel said, thankfully in the second half they showed that, and maybe Bayern did take the foot off the gas a little bit. It required the likes of Harry Kane to be tracking back helping out. Well, they did show in that, in that more familiar 3-4-3, with Pascal Gross further forward, departing Girasul and Adiemi. They did show that they could compete more midfield and create chances themselves. Was that Julian Brandt's first touch when he put it in? When he fell on the
I think it was one of Dortmund's first touches in the opposite half or opposite penalty box.
But just someone, Brandt, I have to watch the game back and see, or someone can maybe tell us, was it actually his first touch? I suspect it might have been. Not a bad first touch, I think, guys.
Yeah, I think so too. The background noise, by the way, is them putting away our cutlery from earlier, in case you're wondering. This is what happens when you do this live in the stadium, Matt.
Getting spoon thrown at me.
You're getting a spoon, yeah. That spoon does look close. No, I think that's what disappointed me about Dortmund is that they didn't play to their strengths. And they did so much better in the second half. And I again, the only reason that almost worked out is because Bayern were so wasteful in the first half. And I think that is something if I'm company, I'd be a little bit worried about, right? I mean, Kane has that big moment, he scores. But Luis Diaz is important on a big of a signing he has been. And I praised him in my preview article and said like that he has been a really important addition to this team. And by subtraction, you can see how important he was to Liverpool.
Yeah.
But he is incredibly wasteful at times.
Yeah, that was this. I think wastefulness on Diaz's part today, and maybe not quite wasteful, but maybe a little bit actually unfortunate on Michael Olise's part. His shot came off the post in the first half. It wouldn't have been in any way out of order had Bayern Munich finished that first half 2-3 goals up with goals for Diaz and Olise, the way they were performing. Not at all. Dortmund were very fortunate to even be in a situation where they could try and get back into it in the second half. Impressive from Bayern. Max Eber did sort of insinuate when asked about the second half. Well, first he was asked was the change in the second half, was that down to Dortmund being particularly good or Bayern being particularly bad in any way? He said, no, we only focus on us. And he said, what's the German expression? A horse only jumps as high as it has to.
Oh, what's the German expression? Das Pferd springt nur so hoch, wie es muss. It's exactly the same as in English, Matt, which you should know because your German is excellent.
Okay.
No, but it is.
When I'm listening to Joshua Kimmich.
Can we talk about that for a moment?
There's nothing to talk about, really.
No, but like in general, because I thought that.
Yeah, it was quite funny. Basically, I asked Kimmich the question, but I'd clearly missed the first 30 seconds of the interview. And it turns out that the journalist before me had asked the same question, but I'd missed it because there's a reason for it. It's because I was double checking the precise words that Max Eberl had used regarding the Jerome Boateng banners. And obviously that's an extremely serious topic. And I wanted to make sure that I got Max Eberl's words completely correct. I was listening to a colleague's recording just to make sure I had it completely right for the post that I then put out. And that is the reason that I then missed the first question and was then told by my teacher, Mr. Kimmich, to listen in future.
Little Napoleon did not like the fact that you did not listen. What did he say? I already answered that question.
Ja, die Frage habe ich schon beantwortet.
But there was another great moment in that mixed zone moment. Did you notice that? So from my vantage point, I was standing to his left, and someone asked him about the difference of playing with Nicholas Jackson and Serge Gnabry. And Kimmich didn't see this, right? Kimmich's son was sitting behind the advertising banner, which you couldn't see because it was blocking.
Okay.
His son was sitting there. And as someone asked this, Serge Gnabry walks behind him, who of course was injured today, and he stops to talk to Kimmich's son. And then someone asked him, so what's the difference about playing with Nicholas Jackson versus Serge Gnabry? And he's like, yeah, Gnabry, he does incredibly work, he drops deep, and you could sort of see Gnabry perk up and go nodding and yeah, that's a good answer.
This has actually been a running theme now in Munich in the past few weeks. There's been a few instances of Joshua Kimmich trying to get Serge Gnabry to talk, even as a part of like a double interview. So I think a lot of the media have been wanting to talk to Gnabry because he's been in good form in recent weeks. Actually, I mean, we were quite surprised today when we saw the lineup of in it because we weren't
Yeah.
aware that he picked up a knock. So sort of really, I thought it was a big shock to see his name not even on the substitutes bench. But yeah, people have been wanting to speak to Gnabry, but he doesn't really like talking. And there's been a bit of a running theme that
It was
Kimmich has been
so good.
trying to tell, like, he's like, Serge, come here, do a double interview. I think at one point Gnabry even said it must have been a few games ago. It might have been the Hamburg game, but don't quote me. One of the Bayern home games where Gnabry basically said, "Now leave it to Kimmich. He likes chatting." So,
Yeah, it was a really funny moment. Like the half of us was standing to see Gnabry listening in, started laughing, and then Kimmich, the teacher he is, he didn't even react at all, knowing fully well that Serge was standing there.
Yes.
You know, does
he have 3 or 4 kids though, Kimmich?
Kimmich has a few.
So he has his own class. He's used to it.
So you think that's why he's like such a teacher?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much.
He was good, Kimmich. You know, provided the corner that Kane
Although there was
scored.
that one uncharacteristically sloppy pass from which Dortmund should have equalised. Right in front of his own box, Kimmich in possession, sloppy pass, Guirassy and Adeyemi capitalise on it. Nice little 1-2 between the two. And I think Adeyemi lost his footing when he had that shot. He seemed to shank it wide, and Kimmich did sort of apologise and accept that afterwards. He's like, yeah, that was his error.
He did.
Yeah, uncharacteristic, but yeah, happens to the best, I suppose.
I do want to let's talk about Adeyemi before I want to touch on one other topic before we close this out. Adeyemi can be so frustrating at times, eh? Like he missed his start, just untidy. There was a couple of times where he missed the pass to Guirassy as well. Had that moment earlier this week against Northern Ireland where he could have ended that game and then all spared us the last 30 minutes of horrendous football.
I think there's an element of Karim Adeyemi which can be wasteful. I think that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, today I would, I think I would defend Karim Adeyemi a bit, to be honest, just given how isolated he and Sergio Guirassy were. It was by far probably his worst game of the season, Adeyemi's. But I think for reasons that's probably a bit beyond his control. So as much as I think you're right, I think he's still a young player. I think we forget that he's 22, I think.
Oh my God, that's the crazy thing about him. He's been in news for like 6 years, right? Because he was a wonder kid.
I think he's younger than you think, and even his first season at Dortmund, I remember him getting injured. In I think it was his first home game, at least maybe his first game for Dortmund. He picked up an injury, so it's not been that easy. He's been the big highlight under Niko Kovac. The two of them have a really, really good working relationship. But I think in defence of Karim Adeyemi, I think the tactics did him no favours today. So I'd be willing to let him off for today.
That's fair. And the other thing that I really wanted to talk about is, and I had this debate with Dan Whiten, who's a friend of the show, often on this podcast, was sitting next to me during this game. We were talking about Manuel Neuer, and I actually think quietly he had an incredible game. And there was a time not that long ago where people discussed whether Gregor Kobel is going to be replacing Manuel Neuer at Borussia Dortmund. And watching those two goalkeepers today, I think that's the most ridiculous thought process ever. There was a couple times when Manu got the ball deep in his own end and he was under pressure and he would play a ball out of his box and it would find an attacker completely, and he's still, I mean, at 39, he is.
That's an absolutely key comparison because I've made that specific note of at least 2 occasions. Gregor Kobel playing the ball out. One of them was actually a ball into Nmecha, which he then lost. Another one was a sloppy pass which went straight to a Bayern player. I think it was Harry Kane. I have to double check. Perfect comparison.
Do you think that
in terms of playing the ball out from the back? Streets ahead.
I had this debate with Dan. Do you think we are overly critical of Neuer because we're comparing him to Manuel Neuer?
overly critical of Kobel?
No, of Neuer.
Because we're comparing him to previous Neuer.
Yeah.
But
if you look at Manuel Neuer right now, where he is in the goalkeeper hierarchy around the world, at his current form, how many other goalkeepers are better?
No argument from me.
Right, that's the thing. Like, so right now, I think at 39, if Germany would bring him back, it would be very tough to argue against, because I don't see any goalkeeper around the world who's currently better than him.
No, I don't either. I mean, I think obviously difficult to really rate Oliver Baumer's performances against Luxembourg and Northern Ireland. Although he was solid enough, there was no problem with it. He did actually make a really, really good save towards the end of that Northern Ireland game.
On the line, Baumann is one of the best in the world, right? But
no,
he doesn't. Yeah,
there's no argument. There's no argument for me. Manuel Neuer is absolutely the best goalkeeper in Germany, and
I actually think
top 3-4 in Europe.
I actually think right now there's I think 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a year or two ago, we could say there's a bunch of them that are better than him around the world. But right now, who do you think ranks ahead of him?
No argument for me. Although I do think maybe today is not quite. I mean, I think your point is right regarding his game with the ball and playing the ball out. Is actually passing.
It's unbelievable.
That was good. That was well visible today. In terms of his actual goalkeeping, shot stopping, they were put under too little pressure. Ultimately, he faced too few shots from Borussia Dortmund to really judge that today. But yeah, I mean, I don't disagree.
There was moments where he was hanging out, not behind the halfway line, but on the other side of the halfway line.
Yeah, that first half was, well, as we've said, and as Niko Kovac apparently admitted, you in the press conference, not me, they got that completely wrong. They went far too defensive.
Yeah,
as Kobel said, second half, it's frustrating because they did show second half that with a bit more, a bit more guts, I suppose, a bit more self-confidence, maybe they could have gone a bit more toe-to-toe.
So, Matt, we're at the half-hour mark. My beer is almost empty. I'm looking over to you as you're sitting on the other end of this weird hallway. Your beer is almost empty too. So let's wrap this up with some final thoughts. Where does this leave us in the Bundesliga?
I think, like we said, I think it leaves Bayern in pole position. I think it leaves Dortmund in an ultimately in a pretty unchanged situation. I said before the game that I didn't expect Dortmund to get absolutely spanked here today like they have in previous years, and that on balance wasn't the case, although we all know that the two halves were a little bit different. And I think it suggests that it's still too early for Dortmund to mount a title challenge. Maybe next year you'll see differently depending on how things develop. I think we saw a continuation of where Bayern are this season, and if I still think, without taking anything away from them, the biggest challenge we'll see starting right now with Bruges in the week and then the games to come. They have got a smaller squad than in previous years. Even today there were 3 youth players in the matchday squad. Be interested to see how that Bayern squad deals with 3 games a week, regular succession, German Cup as well, because that all starts now, and that'll be, and particularly because their current challengers in the league, RB, don't have any of those midweek interruptions. So I mean, again, not saying that Bayern are inevitably going to collapse under that pressure. They probably won't. But that's going to be the next challenge for them. So that'll be interesting to watch.
I thought this would be a bloodbath, and I think it was almost confirmed in the first half. I'm incredibly impressed that Dortmund managed to turn this around in the second half and made it a huge contest. It's too bad they didn't get something here, because I think it would have gotten the Bundesliga, even a draw would have made the Bundesliga shrink together. I suspect that Bayern will win the Bundesliga title now. I hope that it's going to be a bit of a challenge at some point by someone, but I suspect they will win the Bundesliga title now. But I still think Dortmund is further ahead in their development, as you know, and this is where I concur with you completely. I was hoping that they were maybe a little bit further and they could challenge for a Bundesliga title. I think maybe they can make it interesting. I don't think they can win it. But I think in that regard, we're pretty much in concurrent, like we pretty much agree, right? So I think our only task left for today then is to go downtown and find more beer.
Gotta get up at 6 in the morning, but I'll do my best.
Same, man. I have an 11-month-old. He
Cheers,
tells me to
everyone.
get up at 6 a.m. in the morning. So I say, find more beer. We really mean one.
Yeah.
On that note, we'll be back later next week. And until then, auf Wiedersehen.
Ciao.